Good evening and a very warm welcome to all our viewers. My name is Samantha Castle and I'm the Senior Manager for Alumni Relations at the University of Pretoria. Today, we are proud to present our third edition of the Global Alumni Virtual Chats. You may recall that in the first edition, we spoke to alumni from around the world, and in the second edition, we spoke to alumni from across Africa. In today's discussion, we are excited to speak to alumni across South Africa as they share their feelings of lockdown, of how life under lockdown has been for them. Ntabaleng Matela, Metro FM radio personality and UP graduate, will serve as the moderator for this discussion today. Thank you for tuning in and we appreciate all your support. And now, with any further ado, allow me to introduce our Vice Chancellor, Professor Tawana Kupe. Prof. Kupe, over to you.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to everybody to your very top and leading university. I'd like to also welcome especially Ntabaleng, who's going to be my new mentor when I take a dual career as a presenter on Metro. And of course, all of our esteemed panelists. I'd like to say to you all, I have good news for you. University of Pretoria is ranked generally in the top 1.9% in the world in university rankings. But last week, a university ranking called UniRank ranked the University of Pretoria number 1 in South Africa, number 1 on the continent, and number 183 in the world out of 13,000 universities. The university is in good health. It is leading. It offers quality which you carry behind your name. Also want to tell you that 3 of our entities, Gibbs, our business school, in the top 50 in executive education, number 38, is 20 years old this year, doing well for a 20-year-old. Our faculty of EMS, Economic and Management Sciences, 100 years old, Vet Science, 100 years old. Vet Science is in the top 100 in the world. I also want to inform you that we have launched 4 innovation platforms: Future Africa Institute, Innovation Africa at UP, Engineering 4.0, all things for IR and transport, and a new brand art center with 9 galleries, the Javet UP Art Center. We are also ready to make a major contribution to rethinking South Africa as a society, the continent, and the world, and to rethinking a new economy. And all you, our graduates, our alumni, I'm positive you're going to make a huge contribution. I'd like to end by saying thank you to the Alumni Relations Office and to Samantha Castle, the Senior Manager, for this very exciting, very connecting, interactive session. Let's talk to each other. We are, after all, on top of South Africa, on top of the continent, and also a major force in the world. Welcome, UP alumni. You are the greatest.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kupe. And indeed, we're exceptionally proud to be ranked number 1 in the country as well as the continent. Don't forget to join us for our first LeadUP Women Alumni Virtual Chat on Wednesday, 5 August from 6 p.m. as we speak to a diverse panel of women alumni from the University of Pretoria. The topic will be UP Women Looking Back, Looking Ahead, and Taking the Lead. We look forward to all your comments in the slido.com section as well as the live feed. And we hope we enjoy a fruitful discussion this evening. Over to you, Ntabaleng.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for the amazing introduction, as well as Professor Kupe. I look forward to being your mentor one day. A very good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. My name is Ntabaleng Matela. As mentioned, I am a radio personality from Metro FM. I'm also a DJ, but most importantly, I myself am a graduate from the University of Pretoria. So it's absolutely amazing to be your host for this evening. Without any further ado, welcome to the third LeadUP Global Alumni Virtual Chat. This evening's discussion will be centered around the topic Global Lockdowns, Learning, Thriving, or Just Surviving. I'm very honored that over the past few weeks, we've had to have an amazing discussion from different parts of the world with different panelists. We also had a discussion with panelists in Africa, and tonight I'm particularly even more excited because we get to bring it home right here to the South African soil. So I'll be joined by a panel of alumni from different parts of our very own country. We'll also get to hear their individual stories and also their personal experiences based on their respective parts of the country. As part of the discussion, we will also try, to look for a silver lining, especially in a time where the mood in South Africa has somewhat been low because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But we really do hope that by the end of this evening, you will, for example, have a greater understanding of how your peers have learned, thrived, or perhaps are they just going through a day by day. We also hope that you can learn how to utilize your UP education to grow and succeed. And most importantly, also just to gather an understanding on some of the nuances that we've obviously had to experience during the lockdown regulations since they have been enforced in the country. Tonight's event is, of course, brought to you by the University of Pretoria, and our panelists that are all joining us are alumni of UP, as well as myself, as I'm very proud to say that I am. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers. First up, I have a gentleman who's a biokinetics and a sports scientist. He'll be joining us from the Western Cape. He has worked with athletes in all different levels, particularly at a professional level, where he has worked international rugby players. Although he occasionally works, with international teams as a consultant, his main focus these days has been his own private practice in Cape Town, where he spends time there as he is based in Western Cape. In his spare time, he also participates in ultra marathons such as the Comrades and occasional endurance trial runs. So help me to welcome Graham Brits. Welcome so much, Graham. Hi,
Thanks.
Graham.
Hi, how are you?
So
Thanks.
how's everything there in Cape Town?
Oh, it's beautiful. The weather is great. The people are great. We just had the yeah.
Thank you so much. Any words of welcome to everybody that's with us this evening?
Yes, I'm very excited for tonight. It's going to be great just to share experiences and what we're all going through and just to learn and connect. I think that's the key for all of us is to carry each other's burdens during this time.
Very true. Thank you so much for joining us, Graham. Really looking forward to having the discussion with you. Next up on our panel, allow me to introduce a young lady who is multi-talented. I mean, she is an attorney, a notary, a conveyancer, and a speaker. She'll be joining us all the way from Gauteng. She obtained a BCom LLB Law, an LLB and LLM degree from the University of Pretoria, and is now working towards a PhD. It doesn't end there. In 2017, she was also part of the Law Society, where the Northern Provinces actually named her the youngest Black female rather, to have ever become a conveyancer at the time that she was admitted. In 2019, she made the Mail and Gardens prestigious 200 Young South Africans list. Her passion lies in public speaking. She's also a former radio presenter and has appeared in various television programs. She's also spoken in various conferences. She's also part of her notable achievements include the fact that she is a co-founder of a Dignity Foundation, and as well as she has done many other projects that she will obviously be speaking to us about this evening. I'd like to now welcome Gundu Rutanda.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Ntabaleng. It's actually pronounced Gundo. Gundo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gundu. Thank you so much for joining us. Any words of welcome to everyone at home that's with us this evening?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think we really are going through a tough time as a country. So a warm welcome to everyone, who's given their time to just come and hear our stories. And I'd really love to hear as well from the people that will be tuning in, just so that, we in this together and that nobody feels alone. Yeah, thanks, Ntabaleng.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those amazing words of welcome. Next up, allow me to introduce our next panelist. He is an engineering project services manager, and he's joining us all the way from KwaZulu-Natal. He has a BSc degree in chemical engineering from the University of Pretoria and an MBA from the University of Pretoria. He's also an experienced and skills-driven when it comes to resourceful professional management and sound project management skills. He's absolutely amazing in that regard. He is also skilled in business development, strategy planning and control, risk management, and enterprise architecture. So he has run a large number of projects and provided strategic input to many companies as a consultant, and is currently providing project services to a large multinational company. Allow me to welcome Trevi Chetty. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much, Ntabeleng. Much appreciated. And a warm word of welcome to the alumni, as well as the other guests online this evening. Awesome platform to be on. Really grateful for it.
Thank you so much, Trevi. Look forward to chatting to you this evening. Next up, allow me to introduce our very next panelist. She is an MPO communications expert, and she is joining us from the Eastern Cape this evening. So she has strategic marketing professional skills and has an eye for bringing clarity and consistency to large brand communications. She also holds a bachelor's degree in communications, an honors degree in linguistics, and a graduate of master's development practice. Her passion is working with non-profit organizations, and over the years, she has worked with organizations across various sectors. Some of her skills include brand positioning, branding, and content creation. Allow me to introduce Wendy van Eyck.
Thank you, Ntabeleng. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
Thank you so much. Any words of welcome, Wendy, to everyone that's with us tonight?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining. And I think during this time where there's so much social distancing and we don't get to see people face to face, doing these kinds of things are really important and special and just help us to connect with others again.
That's very true. Thank you so much, Wendy. Looking forward to chatting to you as well. And then last, but certainly not least, allow me to introduce our very next panelist. She is a management consulting manager who is originally from Limpopo, but she will be joining us from Gauteng this evening. She graduated from the University of Pretoria with a degree in mining engineering and has an honors degree in technology management. She has worked both underground and open cast for a large global mining company, and currently she works at Fortune 500 consulting company as a strategy and consulting manager. During her time at UP, she was a member of the Golden Key International Honor Society, and she was also crowned Miss Rag 2012. You know, speak of a lady with many trades. She also represented UP at Miss SA Campus, where she was the first Tux Rag to ever win the national title. So she went on to represent South Africa at the Miss World University pageant, where she was placed in the top 10. She's also served as a UN peace missionary, part of that panel, and as a brand ambassador for the Thuli Madonsela Foundation. Allow me to welcome Mudunda Mshizindi. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's good to be here, Ntabeleng, and it's Mudinda Chimbidi.
Chimbidi, there we go.
Yes,
thank you so much. So excited to have you. Any words of welcome for everyone that's joining us tonight?
I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with all the alumni and everyone who's joining us online. This is such an important platform for us to engage on, because we may be separated, but we're never really isolated if we continue to have dialogue and sessions of this nature. So I'm really looking forward to the session.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our amazing panel for this evening. So tonight, throughout the discussion, we will be asking you a couple of questions on Slido, which you can please use the LeadUP 22 July as the code for that. And then as well, if you have any questions that you would like to pose to any of our panelists, please feel welcome to pose your questions there, and then I can therefore ask the panelists. So I think before we get into the discussion, let's perhaps have our first poll for this evening, where I said you can please use the LeadUP 22 July as the password for tonight. So the first poll we have for you this evening is, would you like to hear more stories from the UP alumni across South Africa? First option being yes, I'd love to learn more, or no, I would not. Cool. While you are putting in your answers right there on Slido, let's get straight into the discussion. So the first question I have for each of you tonight is, How would you say that this COVID-19 pandemic and the national lockdown has affected you personally and your family? Perhaps, Graham, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think being in the wellness and sport industry, when it first, started happening around the world, we all thought maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc.
Yes, yes.
For me personally, being self-employed and being a bit of a planner and a fire starter and an energy bunny, I knew that I can't be contained to 4 walls within a house. So I hustled quickly to my connections, and I made sure that I became part of an essential service very quickly. And I got involved in a company, and I was delivering pharmaceutical goods to companies, preventative medicine and medicine to people's houses during the whole lockdown period. So I was all day on the road. It was the most amazing thing to drive down the N1 and into Cape Town at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and be the only car for 500 meters in front of you. But then, that also came with experiencing the lows. So for me, I saw elderly folk that hadn't seen people for 2 to 3 months. I saw sick people. I got to, experience wealthy areas, not wealthy areas. And, lockdown has been really hard for a lot of us in various ways. At the end of the day, salaries haven't come in, and it's been a struggle for a lot of people. So especially those self-employed, I think we all saw today restaurant owners, the wine industry, the tourism industry, various industries, everyone has taken a large flack. So I think family support and having friends and colleagues and people that care about you is absolutely critical. I think.
Thank you so much, Graham.
If I can give one story, I'll give a story. I stopped at an elderly gentleman's house, and the bell didn't ring, and I could call him, and I heard him on the other side of the door battling to open up the door. Eventually, I know that he needed to get this medication, and I ran to the neighbors. They didn't have a telephone number, contact number for him, the neighbors on the other side. And it was just a big slap in my face that we've become so busy in our lives that we don't even have a telephone number for our neighbors next door or an emergency contact person for someone. And that was just something that really touched me during that time.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that, Graham. Thank you so, so much. And Gundo, for you, how would you say that the COVID-19 pandemic and the national lockdown has affected you personally in your life?
Yeah, thanks, Ntabileng. When the lockdown started, for me, it was a shock to the system, literally. I think it took me a month or a month and a bit, just to adjust into what we call now the new normal. Personally, I live very close to my parents, and not being able to see them and not being able to relate to them, as I can. And I mean, I'm talking a 15-minute drive from where I stay to them, to home. And where when you feel like going to say hi, not being able to embrace them, or not being able to embrace your siblings as you would ordinarily, embrace them. I think for me, that's been the biggest reality, that, it's one thing to social distance, but it's another thing to social distance from your closest people, being, your parents and your siblings. But I think, the silver lining for me is that the lockdown has really also given me an opportunity to tap into my creative side. And Ntabileng, it's allowed me to ask myself like very important questions. I think when you're going through the motions, you sort of lose the why, the what, and the how. And so the lockdown has allowed me to sit down and ask myself, what's the bigger picture? What is it that I actually really want to do? What is it that I actually want to achieve? What do I need to readjust? So I think that has been the silver lining to me. So I can say it's had its good, but it's also definitely had its bad. Yeah. And I think the scariest thing for me is coughing and thinking, oh my word, I've caught it. I had a normal flu. Just recently I went to the doctor and she said, you have to get tested. And that's the scariest part, the fact that, you cough or you sneeze and you think it's the virus. And for me, that's the scariest part of it.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that, Good. I think a lot of people can relate. It's almost like that little social paranoia that we all have now. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Trevi, for you, how would you say that the COVID-19 pandemic and the national lockdown has impacted you on your personal life as well as your family?
Thanks for the question. It's a great question. I think, look, it was also very, very abrupt, and it caught us all by surprise, but it was in line with the science, which is good. And I enjoyed really being at home. I think what we find is when we spend 8, 9, 10 hours away from home and the family, there's a disconnect. So you only see in the morning and you see in the evening. And it was actually time for the family to connect at I would say, a more deeper level. I've got young boys, aged 9 and 12, highly, highly energetic. So when dad's at home, it's an opportunity to play. So they bring out their Nerf guns, and it's full-on Nerf wars in the house and in the garden. What I don't miss is the commuting time. You know, there's no time lost in traffic, and I think that's a big bugbear for a lot of South Africans. I do really miss church and gathering. I think that, I am a hospitality leader at the church, which is a fancy word for being an usher. So I greet people. But in any case, as Gunda has mentioned, it's that connection, and it's a time to connect with people, and that's now absent or missing. So even though you have it in a virtual scenario, like us being online right now, there's an immediacy that's actually missing. As well, I think we started off understanding a lot of the statistics behind COVID-19 and how this pandemic spread across the world. But it did get to a point where we had to make then a personal decision. And my wife and I, Michelle and I, got to that point where we realized we had to make a decision about sending the boys back to physical schooling. Although they were online, there was a decision to be made. So that also created an immediacy to the problem, and we then had to be faced with that decision. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing that, Trevi. Thank you so much. And over to you, Wendy. How would you say that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted you personally as well as your family, also being on this national lockdown?
Yes, I mean, I can echo everything that everyone else has said, like the missing your family and not being able to see them when you want to. I think, too, for me, I have quite a few family members who are quite vulnerable, and they're all in the high-risk categories. So that adds an extra layer of anxiety and stress, and just also need to make sure that we actually stay apart. I also have a brother who's a headmaster at a school, and I've seen how their school's been affected by it and teachers have been affected by it. Even though I don't have my own children, I've seen how schools have to close, and they close for a week and then they have to open up again, and then a parent or someone gets infected and it starts that cycle. And so that's been really real. And I think I found too, for me, my normal work is remote. So my actual day-to-day didn't change too much. So I didn't have that sort of steep learning curve that a lot of other people had, where suddenly their office was at home and everything had changed. Like, for me, that was normal. So for me, it was more the loss of other things that maybe I used to keep my stress levels down, where I could see friends or that kind of thing, and those not being available to me. And also being self-employed, like Graham, I've had that fear of, I'm going to lose everything. I'm not going to have any job. My husband lost 90% of his work in 24 hours right after the lockdown started. And so the increase in anxiety and stress levels that you suddenly feel, and how you're going to cope with this. And so I think a lot of people have had those same kind of experiences. Yeah, we just sort of almost overnight, in a very short period, most of what we knew about the world and our lives kind of suddenly changed, and having to learn to be flexible and agile in those situations.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Wendy. And I think, you echo a lot of sentiments that a lot of people feel, where in some cases there's the positive highlights of, being able to spend time with family. And then there's also, the financial impact that a lot of people are facing as well. So there's both that balance of, good and bad. Madunda, for you, how would you say that the lockdown has been, impacting your life personally?
Well, I would echo what the rest of the panelists have said, but I think there are a few nuances to my story. So before lockdown here in South Africa, I was sort of affected by the pandemic in the sense that my husband was working in the Middle East for a consulting company. And, at that time, the government announced that they would be closing the airports within 24 hours. So he had a short time to make sure that he dashed to the hotel, packed everything, booked a flight, and got back to the country. So I was very privileged and happy about that, because I would have found myself being that person with family abroad and who are expats and struggling to come back into the country. And on top of that, I'm a new mommy, so my son just turned 7 months old. So I think it would have been definitely challenging to be in lockdown alone with a small baby. But in terms of lockdown, I was already on maternity leave for 6 months by the time we went into lockdown. So it kind of felt like a continuation of the maternity leave, minus the benefits of obviously having family being able to come over and assist with the baby, and engage and visit. So I think that's also been the biggest challenge for me, is the disconnect from family and having that support system, given the changes in the recent changes with the family. So other than that, in terms of work, not much has changed, because similar to Wendy, a lot of the work that I'd been doing was in any case remote. So not many changes there.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. I think, I got to hear from Wendy as well as from you, Madinda, in terms of how lockdown has impacted you from a professional standpoint. But Gundu, could you perhaps share how your professional life has actually been impacted since lockdown?
Thanks, Ntabileng. So as I explained, I've been used to the long hours and the sleepless nights, but I think the difference now is you sort of feel like you are living at work as opposed to working late, because it's just ongoing. You wake up, your computer's on, and it just never stops. However, I think the biggest impact for me was with regards to the Doctor's Friend, which is a company that I run where I give CPD accredited talks to medical professionals. That's had to stop because how it's structured is you get doctors from all around the world flying in to come and hear you speak in order to upkeep their CPD points. So, it's also just thinking around, how to, get doctors onto one platform in order to continue with that offering. Yeah, but essentially it really has been, trying to be creative about how to continue with work, and also just setting boundaries, right? That has been one of the lessons that I'm still learning, to say, yes, I'm home. Yes, I have access to my laptop, but I need to create the boundaries. I need to set time for work and time for myself, and that's where I am right now, trying to figure out, that whole boundary setting.
Thank you so much for that. And for you, Trevi, other than enjoying not being stuck in traffic, from an engineering perspective, how have you been impacted by lockdown from a professional standpoint?
I think the work from home space was just another disruptor that occurred. I think the story that I want to share quite briefly is that for the company that we're working with on the project team, there was a massive storm which hit Durban, and it actually blew off the roof. I wasn't fortunately inside, but there were a couple of people inside. So we got displaced once. And then during that time, it was about a year, we were all working from cabins, porta cabins. And then the building was beautifully refurbished, and we moved into it, and state-of-the-art IT equipment and offices really done well by architects, beautiful colors. It was so inviting to go and work into that space. And then, of course, Lockdown 1.0 happened, and we were disrupted again. And then I'm finding myself working out of a granny flat, which was just another way of, adapting, being resilient, and making sure that you take it in your stride and you start delivering results. So from the time of the lockdown, we were totally still having to transition digitally into Microsoft Teams. And we actually met every single day with the team, which was great from that perspective, because we could still drive all of the project deliverables forward. but it also created an opportunity for us to discuss topical issues actually every day. So we followed the trends globally and started understanding the science and some of the countermeasures and mitigations. So from that perspective, my straight answer was that it was seamless. And if you're open to just going through the ups and downs of 3G bandwidth, you'll be fine.
Thank you so much for sharing, Trevi. It's great to hear how a lot of professions and industries are having to leverage a lot of technology nowadays in order to be able to actually function properly. But Graham, I want to hear from you because you are a biokineticist and a sports scientist. So a lot of your profession has to do with human contact. How has your professional life been impacted during lockdown?
Yeah, that's very true. For me, the personal touch is everything, and having the energy to motivate someone to do a certain movement or do a certain rehabilitative exercise to improve their state of living. You know, to put on a clip online and do exercise is not quite the same of having someone encouraging you and you're in a class and there's music. So a lot of trainers and bios and physios had to adapt to Zoom training. I find it very difficult because I'm a hands-on person. I luckily got into the open air and I used parks, I used stairwells, I used underground parking areas. I've used spaces between apartments and flats, and then I just carry equipment with me, and I prefer to, keep a 2 meter distance with someone, but most importantly, just chat about them and give them attention and work more on that mental side. The training is a byproduct for me. The most important thing during COVID was to really look after the person and the emotional side of the person. And I learned that from being a driver and driving around and seeing how important our mental state is. Some people have enjoyed exercise. You've seen people run around their houses, millions of laps. You've seen people do strange things. Other people then have gone and they've done eating. They've slept a lot. Depression, causes you to sleep a lot. Yeah. I know so many people that have picked up a hell of a lot of weight. So we all handle these situations. And that's okay. It's okay if you've picked up 5 kilos, but just own it and say, okay, where are you going to go to from here? What is your strategy going forward? Where are you going to make a few little changes to create a better you? Because none of us could have predicted what's happening here. None of us could have planned for this. So it's important to sit down, draw a mind map, and come up with a game plan, something that's going to suit you, your family, and your children. Get something that works for you guys where you can spend quality time together and look after that emotional connection. I think that is 90% of my battle.
Thank you so much, Graham. I absolutely agree. We're in a time where we are, of course, practicing social distancing, but we shouldn't be practicing emotional distancing. So thank you so much for adding that. Wendy, for you, you are in a nonprofit organization space. How would you say lockdown has impacted you professionally?
Yeah, so I've actually been quite fortunate in that most of my clients work in the public health space. So for them, this has actually been a time where there's been more work from my side to work with them and help them and support them with their communications. And I actually have found a lot of nonprofits are struggling for funding, but some of the work that I do is actually help people fundraise and support them with that too. So it's actually been another time where people are actually reaching out and saying, how can you help us? What can we do? And so personally or professionally, I haven't found that I've had the loss of work, which has been great, and something that I've really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And then lastly, Madinda, from you, other than being, a new mommy, how would you say right now, professionally, lockdown has impacted your life?
So I would say it's twofold. So firstly, similar to Gunda, I think establishing boundaries has been quite a key thing to be able to dedicate time to the family, baby and hubby as well. But I think from a work perspective, it hasn't really changed very much in that the kind of work we do being in professional services is very fluid and allows the privilege to be able to work remotely. And we find ourselves in projects where we work across multiple geographies, different skill sets. So we are used to being able to deliver and work collaboratively with teams remotely. But I think from an industry perspective, being from a natural resources point of view, we have seen a lot of impact in terms of the clients that we service who are in the mining industry and energy sectors, because, you know, COVID regulations have required a de-densification of their operations. We're finding lower staff complement and still needing to meet certain production targets, which naturally would have to be lower because you have fewer people working. But there is still an intensification in terms of a safety standards and safety point of view, because naturally with natural resources, that's always at the forefront of all operations. So that's also impacting our clients and indirectly also impacting us.
Thank you so much for that. Graham, I just want to ask you a question, because you obviously touched on the fact that the time when you encountered certain people, you actually realized that certain people were longing, you know, just to see someone. How would you say that, you know, lockdown has actually impacted people's mental health?
I think it's hugely underestimated the impact that it has. I only think, you know, in months to come, we'll really know, you know, in terms of loneliness, in terms of handling day-to-day stress. I think a lot of people, like we've said, you know, will cope with their stress in different manners. And that could be abuse of certain substances. It could be a violent behavior. It could be anger management. So we need to find something that we can help to deal with our stress, whether it's cutting down a tree, doing some gardening. Ladies might like some scrapbooking, knitting, something to escape for that moment of time, and to create a blocking out of the pressures of day to day. Because when you're in the confinements of your own house or your own little flat, those walls will try and swallow you after a while. So change the way your environment looks. Work a little bit outside. Make sure you take regular walks every 45 minutes. Create a time where you do a bit of exercise. Go outside and take a few deep breaths. Look at flowers. Plant something. Nurture something during you know, write down emotionally, maybe getting a diary. Write down what you're experiencing, what your fears are. Chat to your spouse. How can she help you manage those fears and those expectations? Sometimes us as men, you know, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be the breadwinners and to be the stronghold. And my wife has been, you know, been my pillar during this time. I put a lot of pressure on myself. So when I expressed that to her, you know, she was fantastic in just the manner to say, listen, I've got your back. You know, other times we help each other. And that's what family is about, and having colleagues. But I think the key is still, at the end of the day, communication. We have to communicate what we're experiencing, and forums like this is a fantastic way to say, hey, I'm also experiencing that. You're not the only one. Let's carry each other's burdens.
True. Thank you so much, Graham. I absolutely agree with you 100%. And Gundo, you mentioned the fact that, you know, you have carved out some me time. You know, you've learned a lot about yourself during this time. We actually didn't anticipate that we'd actually be over 100 days into lockdown. What would you say are some of the new hobbies that you have developed during this time?
Thanks, Ntabiling. So I've actually learned that I love to bake. That's one of the things that I've been doing. So I've been baking. My first love, just like you, Ntabiling, I was actually on Tax FM when I was at UP. Yay! So I'm also working on, you know, getting back into the media space, whether it's through a YouTube channel, but, you know, just getting my voice out there and saying what I really want to say, you know, on a platform that doesn't have to be radio or TV. So I've also been journaling, like Graham has been saying, just having conversations with myself, really figuring out what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling it, how I want to deal with it, and spending a lot more time praying as well. That's also something that I've been doing. So I think there's been some good, and the baking has improved. I'm really enjoying that.
That's absolutely great. And Trevi, from you, any new hobbies that you have developed during lockdown that you'll potentially continue post-lockdown?
Look, I think it was just out of necessity that drove me to do different stuff, like being a barber. Just purchasing one of those shaving kits and doing the boys' hair. It forces you to do that. I think the other thing was just the joy, yes, of creating and baking, making pizza dough, and getting that yeast to be active, and making sure that the dough is of the right consistency and pliability. It's really fun. It forces us to be together. There were some trials and errors. I know the first time I got the temperature wrong for these yeast cells. There was nothing, right? There was no carbon dioxide reaction, and I actually just chucked it into the dough. And Michelle and I then soon realized it's a big boo-boo. This is not working, right? And then general handyman, electricians, sorting out shower doors, and gardening, mowing the lawn, sorting out the pool pump, and making sure that it's dosed with the correct hThe. So it's really, not having the services because of choice. You don't want to actually allow service providers into your vicinity for their health and their safety and yours as well. And out of necessity, just tending to these tasks. And as Graham said, that pattern interrupt, breaking away from the normal routine and devoting yourself to some of these things is very rewarding. So yeah.
It is. Thank you so much for sharing there, Trevi. Just for the sake of time, I'm just quickly going to give us the poll results that we had from the first poll that we did, which asked, would you like to hear some more stories from the UP alumni across South Africa? And we had 100% of you saying yes. So I would actually like for us to quickly do our second poll, which is, do you have any interest in connecting with alumni in your province? Yes, I do, or no, I'm not interested. If you can please put your answers there in Slido, it will be absolutely great. I actually have a question here that's also come in from our audience that says, with the current cycle, do you think it is better to have children learning from home or at school? Anyone would like to take that one? It's from Anonymous.
Yeah, if I may. I
Yes.
think, look, I was faced with this dilemma myself, and in as much as you want to detoxify yourself from media, because media can get very confusing, you have to get down to what you believe is the right science. And the right science was being echoed by the World Health Organization, indicating that kids, for whatever reason, have less of those ACE2 receptors, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors, and so were less prone towards either contracting this disease and actually suffering any mortality from it. And there was also science that says that kids, need that social interaction. They need to be around their friends. And what I found is that there was rapid adaptability from kids of that age, my kids included, to go onto online learning, MS Teams and the like, but they missed their friends and they missed that interaction, and the energy needed an outlet. And it cannot actually just be myself and Michelle for all that time, because they have a lot more energy than I do, and there's only so much of Nerf games I can play. So yes, because of the science and because of other factors with regard to not wanting them to miss out on their education and miss out on schooling and interaction, and after getting assurance from their school that the right countermeasures were in place, temperature checking, online profiling, sanitization, deep cleaning, getting a nurse at the school, etc. Yeah, we had to make the decision, and so far so good. But I do realize that there's another part to the question that I don't want to perhaps answer right now, but and that question is, well, how will this end? How will this eventually play out? And we can come to that later on. But yeah, I was faced with the decision, and I think it's the right decision. I think it was the right decision for me to get them back into school, with the assurance that we have those countermeasures.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Trevi. Really, really appreciate it. I think we can move over to the second round of questions. One thing we can all agree on is that we have all had some memories of some kind, being in UP. I myself, having lived and raised at Astorov, I have a handful of memories from that time. Madinda, I would love to hear from you because you seem to have done a lot during your time at Tux. Not only Golden Key Honor Society, but you were also crowned Miss RAG 2012. What would you say was some of your fondest memories during your time at University of Pretoria?
So I started by chuckling because you said you stayed at Astorov.
Yeah.
I stayed at Erica, so you guys were right next door, always making noise by the giraffe.
Oh, I love the giraffe.
But, I would say my fondest memories they're actually quite a number, but I think the one that stands out the most for me was participating in Miss Tux RAG. So I joined because my dream and my aspiration is to become a philanthropist. I have a very big passion for social impact. So I figured, what's the biggest platform that I can get involved in, which would allow me to get exposure in terms of running of nonprofits or non-government organization. And I thought to myself, let me do something radical. I'm going to enter Miss Tux RAG. Mind you, I had never modeled a single day in my life. And I was that engineering student with a backpack. And I was like, this is my vision. I'm going to go for it. And it was actually quite hilarious because when I went to enter, I remember one of the moderators, and he was studying BCom. He said to me, "No, you're an engineering student. You're never gonna have time for this. Just don't do this at all. You're not cut out for this." And I think it just fueled me more. I was like, this guy does not know that I'm here to raise money, and I want to do this with a passion. So I went home initially. He said no. And I cried to my best friend. I was like, I can't believe this guy said I don't have what it takes. And unbeknownst to me, my best friend actually went and shouted at this guy. And the next day she's like, you're entered. So I that's how I ended up in the competition. There was various rounds where we had to raise money for the beneficiaries. And I think you start off with like 2,000 Rand and then it goes to 5,000 Rand for the next round. And when I started, I think there were about 240 girls that entered. And I was like, what? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do my best, try raise as much money as possible. And I think in every round, I raised almost 5 times the amount that was always required. And that sort of proved to me that, I think I can do this fundraising thing and maybe I am destined to do this. So it was great when I eventually did win, and also getting the privilege after that to be able to, represent the university at Miss South Africa campus. And eventually winning that, so I was like, geez, I'm such a novice and I'm just, I don't know how it happened. So, eventually, like you mentioned in the introduction, I got the opportunity to be able to represent South Africa at World Miss University. And there were about 80 countries there. So placing in the top 10 and eventually winning the speech and being nominated as the UN Peace Emissary. I stood at that stage in South Korea because the pageant was there over a period of 3 weeks. And eventually when I, was so honored to have represented the country and gotten into top 10, I thought to myself, you know what? All those things that you think are so impossible to do and you don't have experience in, you should just jump in and go.
Just jump in.
So that's my
Thank you so much.
Memory.
Oh, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Madinda. Wendy, I'd love to chat to you. You obviously have skills, which include brand positioning, branding, as well as content creation. When it comes to speaking to someone who's a young graduate right now, who's potentially about to, step into their first role, their first job, what advice would you give to a young graduate in that position?
Yes, I think there are probably 2 things that I'd say. I'd say the one is to actually meet as many people as you can. And ultimately, your network's going to be your biggest asset. So figure out how to, if you don't feel comfortable talking to people, learn how to feel comfortable talking to people. If you feel uncertain in situations, like Madinda was saying now, like the things that you thought were impossible, you can do. So go into a room with people and try to meet 5. But don't run around like being like, here's my business card, I want a job. Just spend time talking to those 5 people, learning about their lives, getting to know them, listening to their story, and really do that every single time you go somewhere. Get to know somebody genuinely, and you'll find that those people become your friends, that become part of your network. And later on, when you need work, like Graham, who was suddenly like, I really want to do something during lockdown. I don't want to be locked at home. He was able to then use to find something to keep him active. And so for me, that's been the greatest asset that I've had in my career, is actually having that. And the other thing would also just be to be open to change. I think, don't think that you do one thing and you need to be stuck that way. You might be changing career, you'll be changing your mindset, you'll be changing all kinds of things. So in your life, like, always be open to change, be open to new ideas, and be prepared to adapt and be flexible in all situations. I think if you can do those two things, you'll have success in whatever career path or road that you try to take as a person.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Wendy. And now, Wendy, if I were to ask you, right, if you could look back or have a conversation with your 21-year-old self, what would you say to yourself?
I would say, don't be in such a rush. I think when I was 21, I felt like I had to do everything now, like, because you have to get a job, you have to find somebody to marry you, have to like do all these millions of things, and they have to happen now because there's just not enough time in life. And I think that I wish I could have gone back and said to myself, like, actually, there's time. If you want to take time between your BA and your honors to go and travel, you can do it. There's time. Like, if you want to take time to explore different career paths, there's time. Be patient. Like, I think that sometimes we forget that, like, time and patience can birth many amazing things in life. And I think I keep reminding myself, even now, I keep saying to myself, like, I'm 37 and I'm just getting started. Like, my life's not over. And I think, yeah, if I could go back and speak to myself at 21, I'd just say, like, don't be in such a rush. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You can do all these things that you're imagining. There's still time.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Trevi, I'd like to ask you, with the difficult moments that we're in right now, a lot of people are finding it very hard to stay motivated and to persevere. How do you, keep that positive outlook on life?
I would think you need to be grounded. You must be centered. And for me, that is just centered on my faith and my relationship with Jesus. I think you would need to reach out to people. You would need to connect. Don't think you're going through things alone. Gary Player, he made the comment that with the more I practice, the luckier I get. And I think the more you prepare, when opportunities do come your way, you would have something to do, you would have an outlet for it. So I think being grounded, being centered on your faith, and reaching out to people, connections, communication, I think that's key. It helps me move forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Trevi. Gundo, if I could ask you, speaking to there's a lot of young people who are with us this evening, who are young graduates, potentially some still university students. What would you share, with any young person in our country right now? What would you say to them?
I would echo when you say that you really don't have to have it all figured out. Allow yourself time to learn, and I think that's the one thing that I was not told. And maybe I'm an eager beaver, and I wanted to do everything, and I still want to do everything. But the truth is, like Wendy said, there is time. Try, fail, learn, and try again. That's what I'd say. As long as you're not giving up, then you're on the right track. But I think it's also important to know that, we shouldn't box ourselves into other people's expectations. We shouldn't put time frames. You don't have to be married at 30. You don't have to have children at 25. You need to allow your life to unfold. It's your journey. It's your destiny. It's your life. So live your purpose. Do the best you can, as Maya Angelou says. And when you know better, do better. And that's what I've come to learn.
Thank you so much. I really agree with what you said. I absolutely love it. And Madunda, I'd like to ask you, we have Women's Month, just on the horizon. Do you think that enough has been done to bring about gender equality in South Africa? Or do you feel that there's potentially still room for improvement? And how can we go about changing the status quo?
So in my view, I don't think that enough has been done. I think there's always room for improvement. But I would look at it from 3 different lenses. I would think looking at it from a gender rights perspective, economic emancipation, and also gender equality in the workplace. So in terms of gender rights, we are, having an outright onslaught of women in the country. There's so much gender-based violence, and there's so much that's been happening in terms of trying to get awareness, protests, etc. But I think that what in my view, we need to do a lot more in terms of eradicating that passive voice, that being that whenever we are hearing about gender-based violence, it's always, this woman experienced this, or this woman was raped. It's never this man did this to this woman, so I think eradicating that passive voice is an important thing. But also I think we need to really normalize having men champion the issue, having men have these conversations in their circles, because that's where the real impact is going to come in. When your friend or your mate is making a joke, at a braai, or you're having a conversation with your buddy, that's the right time to be able to speak up and address these things, so that it doesn't get to a point where women have to endure some of these hardships and have to solve them as well. So that's one. And I think also in terms of economic emancipation, that's also an important one. We find that, the gender pay gap is extremely large, not only in South Africa, but globally as well. I think the last stat was saying that it would take 202 years to actually get equal pay for men and women. And that kind of feels like it won't happen in my lifetime or my children's lifetime. So I would say that we have a lot of work to do in that space, and also in the workplace, making sure that we are being intentional about mentoring women to get into positions of leadership and occupy those spaces, so that they can also bring up other women, and also that really impacts the innovation of a company and the way that the company operates from a diversity perspective. So in a nutshell, I think there's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your answer there. Graham, there was actually a question that had come through for you that said, how did you manage to diversify? Can you maybe share the process of taking initiative? That was a question that came through from Greg.
I think as you've studied and you've built up a contact or a resume over years, keep in contact with those people. Have them on LinkedIn, have them on social media. Check in with people. Take time to pay interest and to take knowledge of what's happening in people's lives. Those are so valuable, because those assets are very much underutilized. And I think we all realize now how important having a network is.
Yes.
So finding out what friends do, what colleagues do, and just being yourself, being open, communicating, as I've said earlier, and checking in with people. The opportunities will always come. Where disappointments happen, other doors will open. So just keep seeking opportunities. Rely on your faith, rely on your work ethic, and rely on you having an ability to be open to experience things. Don't just think because we've only studied one thing that we're only equipped for one area. I think we need to realize now that we are dynamic as individuals, and we can adapt and we can learn and we can be able to thrive in any area, as long as you are grounded and you're open-minded and you're available to work hard. I think that's the way to go.
Cool. Thank you so much, Graham. We're almost out of time. I think I'm going to pose the very last question to Trevi and ask, do you think working from home has become the new normal?
I think the cat's out the bag. I think corporate South Africa now knows that people can be fully effective and fully functioning in a virtual environment, and have the accountability to work from a distance. As long as you keep in touch and driving your deliverables forward, I think that's what they know. So having said that, I think new normal is somewhat of a misnomer. I think I like never normal, because there's been a change, there's been a fundamental disruption. And I think people, millennials, all of us will now have a choice as to the balance that you want to strike for yourself. And I think now that we've proved pretty much globally that this workforce who are largely in the intellectual space can function very, very effectively and efficiently. I regularly have meetings across the globe with my local team and international teams. And so I think the cat's out the bag, and it's a matter of us now showing that we can do it and we can maintain this going forward. Our carbon footprint is drastically reduced. We don't have to fly and travel around. So there's a lot of positives. If we can just have the 3G, 4G, 5G networks and bandwidth supporting us, and our laptops not losing power.
Yes.
I think you have your answer, Ntabeling.
Yes. Thank you so much, Trevi. I really agree with you. If we can really just get that internet connection a lot stronger, I think life will be a lot easier for all of us during this time. But thank you so much to all of you for joining me this evening. I'd just like to share the poll results that we had received from the previous poll. It was, would you like to hear more stories from the UP alumni across South Africa? And 100% of you said, yes, you would love to. So for the last poll, the last question we have for you is, how likely are you to refer the LeadUP event to your business colleagues or other alumni, with 1 being very unlikely or 10 being extremely likely, which is what I hope we're all leading towards. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was an absolutely amazing time with each of you. Graham, thank you so much. Gundu, Trevor, Wendy, Madinda, I really appreciated having you guys on the panel. But more than anything, I appreciated having all of you at home who were with us this evening in our discussion. Make sure not to miss out on the next session that is happening on Wednesday, the 5th of August at 1800, which will be, of course, 6 p.m. South African time. And the discussion there will be UP women looking back, looking ahead, and taking the lead. Tonight's event was brought to you by the University of Pretoria's Alumni Relations team. We want to say thank you to them, and thank you to you as well for being with us. We'd love to hear more from you. So if you could ever take a moment on time on Slido to give us feedback on how you enjoyed tonight's event, it'll be absolutely great. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us. Have yourself an amazing evening further. Thank you. Bye.